My name is Anne. I am a compulsive reader and a bulimic. What do? I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. My food is committed to my sponsor. I don't eat between meals no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And my abstinence date is October the 21st, 2000. So I can't not eat. I, on my own, can't do it. I'm very clear about that, but something can, and I'm just another, piece of evidence in the court case for Gray Sheet works, or the persuasive. I've been helping my son with persuasive essays lately. I have a persuasive essay about how Gray Sheet works, and I'm one of the pieces of evidence. And there's so many of us. And so what I want to do is welcome anybody who's new and anybody who's counting days. Because I just kept coming back till I didn't have to go eat again. And my experience is I got a deep understanding that I can't. When people are struggling and they say, I can't do it, and I can't, and I mightn't be very reassuring because I'll say, that's the point. Yeah, you can't. And leave a space with a newcomer who says, I can't. Yeah, you can't. I know I can't eat, but I can't. But I'm stopped. So what stopped me? Something can. And my experience was to get to Gray Sheet, hear the message, want what you have, and not be able to just go out the door and weigh and measure from that day. I had day one over and over again. I had 6 months of day ones. Now, there are people who have 6 years of day ones. It does matter to how it feels to have 6 years of day ones versus 6 months. But what I'm getting at is that sense of powerlessness going on day after day after day. I don't regret the past or want to shut the door on that, because what that gave me was the understanding that I can't, and that's okay. Something can. That greater, higher power is part of the consciousness of Gray Sheet. I don't get it by going somewhere, by reading a book, by talking to friends, by being close and loving to family, by being of service with a church. I get the consciousness of what we do by being with you and hearing you and communing with you all the time. Just as a reminder of what it was like, the big book always, I'm a convert. When I read the big book and related in my food experience, I was such a believer. It says, after we have succumbed to that desire, when we take those bites, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, we pass through this well-known stage of a spree or a binge, emerging remorsefully, a firm resolution not to overeat again. And this is repeated over and over and over until the person experiences a psychic change. That's kind of devastating to read, to come in and hear that. And further down the page, it said something more than human power is needed to produce the psychic change. And so the quicker you admit that you can't personally do it, the better, because you can move on to finding the power that can. And I was told that, we all gather in a room, and this is gathering in a room right now. We gather in a room with the deep conviction of everybody standing on the knowledge that no matter what happens today, there's no reason to eat, that no matter what, we do Gray Sheet. And that is a common consciousness that unites us, because in the big book, they talk about those people in the lifeboat after the Titanic or after the ship has sank. They have a common solution, a common way out that we can all agree on. That's our common bond. Our common bond is not how we ate, even though there's a lot of commonality when people talk about how they ate. Our common bond is what we do. We all do this thing. And so I'm a believer in that. I'm a believer. I know that I was an eater out of the chute. There's a few people on here who could probably tell my story, but there's still some people I don't know faces. So I will go and tell you that, I was almost 11 pounds when I was born. And I was the last baby for my mother. No shit, right? I don't think she was going to do that again. And I was like, not clinically obese, but I was what they call in Ireland well padded as a kid. I was like chunky and well padded, and fine childbearing hips was a lovely compliment to be getting when you were 13 years old in Ireland. Nah. So I knew what it felt like, but I felt like 400 pounds. I just knew that I wasn't okay inside, and I knew that I was different with food. I was not neutral. The sugars and starches, I wasn't neutral. Early on, they saved me for whatever reason, that I had emotional inner something, hole in the donut, missing something. The food worked, and the food soothed my soul and calmed me and did whatever it needed to do to keep me, I suppose, alive. It was my coper till it was the demon. And so throughout my life, food always worked. So I think it was my first drug of choice. And, later I got to alcohol, and I got to college, and I got to mixing all those things together. And, but food was like from the get-go, from the little kid, the, the food was the thing that turned me into kind of an animal, I hid it pretty well. I would have a conversation with you and nod my head and appear sort of normal, but the interior insanity that was going on in my life had me just looking over your shoulder to where the food was and making plans for later, doing calculations of how many calories, how much I had to run or burn off, what I could buy, what size would I fit, just like I was consumed with it. And, when I discovered bulimia, probably my early 20s, that was another new facet of the disease that came on me. And that just allowed it allowed me to binge bigger, because then I was getting rid of it and I could binge again. Instead of passing out and going unconscious, I could go again. And it just shows me the progressive nature of the disease, that my quirky story went that way. I mean, I think there's a lot of different vegetables in the garden of compulsive overeaters, and some are overeaters and some are exercisers, and it doesn't matter. I just can't stop. I just can't stop. And so I got to 12-step programs in the mid 90s. I was in Los Angeles with, by the time I got to it, he was an ex-husband. We were divorcing. And in the trauma of the divorce, the therapist sent me to OA when I told her how I was coping with the divorce. And I was sentenced to go to an OA meeting before I came back to see her the next week. And so there's the first one of the angels I can remember, in my life when she did that. And so I did spend a bunch of years in OA, and I could only handle a stated abstinence of no vomiting, no matter what, because it was all I couldn't eat. I couldn't imagine doing what there was a few people in there talking about 3 meals a day. And that just, it was like, are you kidding me? I'll just not throw up, but not throwing up can allow you to balloon and go down. And it's like, you can still, as long as I have the addictive substance in my bloodstream, I now know what abstinent for me means: clean and clear-minded abstinence from the drug that sends me and turns me into an animal. But, progressive disease got worse. And all the things I was trying to hide in my eating caused me to break that abstinence. And it just went deeper and darker. So when I got to Grey Sheet, I was really deep and dark and hopeless, and felt helpless. And someone told me to try Grey Sheet. And so what happened for me was, it was really experiential. I would get a few days of abstaining, and I knew the food was down. But then I would get this urge, and it didn't matter if I called you. It didn't matter. I personally don't believe in the tricks of, if you call someone, it stops you eating. I called a freaking lot of people and still ate. I wiped crumbs off and went into meetings. I left meetings and I went to eat. I just think there's some mysterious grace about when it occurs, because all I was willing was, I had the deepest in my heart willingness to stay, to weigh and measure the next meal, no matter what I had at the last meal or last night, and to keep doing it. It almost felt like I don't know, like, you ever seen a video of a blind dog and they walk into the wall and they're just walking into the wall and they're walking into the wall. And I just kind of walked into the wall with Gray Sheet. Thank you. That's 10. I kept doing it despite what was happening. So it sounds like a little bit blasphemous to say, but based on my experience, I tell people to weigh and measure between binges till you don't have to binge anymore, because that was my experience. And there's no harm. I don't make anybody eat by that. I don't make anybody eat, and I don't stop anybody eating. Right. But I say that because I feel like my experience can benefit others. And that's what I did in the deepest faith that it would eventually take. I was told, like, if you just have the faith the size of a mustard seed. And I went to the spice cabinet and I did get one, and I did see how tiny that is. And I was like, do I believe enough do I have that much belief that it could work? I'm like, yeah, I have, like, it's that much. It's about that small, but it's that much. And that was enough. You guys told me that was enough. So I weighed and measured the next meal. And so there came a day where I didn't have to binge again, but I didn't pick the day. I always say I didn't pick the day because the days I picked went right by. So I'm very clear about personal powerlessness doesn't do it. Personal power doesn't make it work. Self-knowledge doesn't make it work. There's something else. There's this thing that happens by placing myself around a bunch of people who are doing it. And that's why I have to stay in the herd. 20 years on, I have to stay in the middle of the herd because it's a consciousness. It's a group thing. It's kind of like an invisible, like, cloud of something. And I need that, like, invisible cloud affecting me. And I don't get it when I leave you. I mean, I haven't tried to leave you, but I haven't been compelled to, like, exit Gray Sheet. The other thing in the back of the book, when they talk about a spiritual experience, they say, okay, he realizes he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life. And that's spiritual experience. So if I have got my food down and I weigh and measure and I see 0.0 at the scale and I move on and I had an abstinent meal, that's a profound alteration in my reaction to life. Because my reaction used to be, keep going, get more, please, keep going. And I don't. So the spiritual experience it already is with an abstinent meal. And it's about staying in. I had to quit judging myself, shaming myself, self-hating myself when I ate again. Because what happened is I had a number of experiences with getting possessed. It's like possessed by the devil. And it was happening, and I knew it was happening, and it was terrifying. And I knew that could go away. You guys said, remember how you feel the morning after the last binge? Like, they said, you never, ever have to feel that way again. Now, I haven't had to feel that way again for over 20 years. And that promise kept me here. And what I say is what I say to a newcomer or to someone who ate again, who's not a newcomer, who ate again, is like, I tell them what my sponsor said to me, because I would call this woman up who's still my sponsor today. And I'd say, I need to, like, go away and get a few days before I call you. I felt such patheticness calling and saying, I did it again. And she would say, keep on keeping on. That was all she said. And what are your next 3? So that's what I get to offer the next person. What are you having for your next 3? Because I really feel like the person who calls me and wants to hand over the next 3, I don't have to analyze where they went wrong, what they did. I don't need to give them a writing assignment. I just need to hear, what are your next 3 meals? And keep on keeping on. Because there's this grace thing. There's this mystery thing about, if the deepest intent of a person's heart is Gray Sheet and abstinence, and they keep showing up, then my job is to just reach out my hand and like, I'm going to lift them up. I'm not going to push them down. I'm going to say, hang on, get a hold of my hand. It's like when I was eating, I felt like I was underwater in a swimming pool. I felt like, you know, you can see above the water, but everything's kind of fuzzy. Life was happening above, and I could never, like, bust through the surface and take a breath. And somebody grabbed my hand and pulled me up to breathe. And you guys help me breathe every day. That's what it feels like. Because now this thing is what I've heard described as the metronome of my existence. You know, it's the thing that allows me to live my life. So, I mean, we moved from LA to Georgia a year ago. My life involves being married in a home with 2 kids who have spent a year online school and are concluding. I couldn't get a license for my professional. Thank you. That's another 5. Okay, let me wind up soon. I couldn't get a license for my professional life for about a year. Well, what did it do? It blessed me with being able to support these kids in this situation. All our lives look different. I don't think there's like a life that is a gray sheet life. Life is life. Life is lifing and happening. And gray sheet is the thing that allows me to go through it and go through the next thing with what for me feels like dignity around my food. I want to have dignity around my food. And, you know, I behave with my food in the kitchen the same way if you weren't there as if you were there. Now, that's pretty much the dignity around food that I felt so small and pathetic about when I was eating. Because when you left and I was eating, it was not pretty. You know, me in my cups is not a pretty sight at all. I'll wind up by saying I love my food. It's really important to me. It needs to be like delicious. I like big, greasy. I can spend an inordinate amount of times looking for big, crunchy breakfast fruits. What the hey? You know what? I have very few vices. If I'm going to drive to an extra store for a monster fruit, rock on. And that's where I embrace that little one inside of me that feels like it's not okay. Because you guys, you're like thumbs up around that. At least most of you are. Gray sheet is just so symbolic of, because I weigh and measure my food. Now, I haven't weighed and measured every detail of my life. I have so many unresolved issues, but it helps me have an action plan to weigh and measure in other areas and to have a better experience. But I want to say that the contentment of my heart around the way I am with my food makes me smile. I can have a smile around who I am with my meals. And it's because we do it together. So for me, dinner is coming. That's always important. The next meal, there's always a meal. How about that? It's like, you know what, there's always another meal coming. If I don't get exactly what I want, I'll have it tomorrow. So reassuring. Anyway, thanks.